So, do we still need paper charts? I think so. A lot of people would say no. There's only a couple scenarios where I think that they become necessary, and they're highly unlikely as well. If something happens where you lose all of your electronics, and you could actually be out there without charts, without electronic charts, and without GPS location. What would that take? Well, in the case of our boat, we'd have to lose our chart plotter. We'd have to lose our phones. We'd have to lose our iPad, which also has a built-in GPS. We'd have to lose our radio because it has a built-in GPS as well. So there would have to be a lot of things lost at once. Scenario seems somewhat unlikely. Even when we got hit by lightning a while ago, we did lose several of those components, but we actually still had our primary GPS connected up to our chart plotter that still functioned, and we had our phones. I doubt that we will ever run into a situation where we actually lose all of our electronics on a several-day passage. Obviously, you could lose DC power, and maybe you still have your phones. You may have difficulty charging them, but hopefully you can just make a beeline for shore somewhere. Not any shore. Make sure there's a place to stop. But there's other scenarios too where GPS could be lost. If the U.S. government decides to shut down GPS, to prevent their adversaries from being able to use it, that's always a possibility. Our adversaries could shoot down our GPS satellites. There's scenarios that again are unlikely, but I have no desire to put myself or my family at risk based off of an unlikely scenario happening. So what do? I do the bare minimum required so that I believe if we were to lose all of our electronics on board and GPS, that I could pull up a paper chart and I would be able to safely determine what direction we need to head to get within sight of land. This is not a replacement for passage planning. This is not coastal navigation. Once you get within sight of land, you still need to be able to use coastal navigation techniques to actually get safely into an anchorage or a port. But what I do is I do what I believe is the bare minimum that will allow me to get back within sight of land, and I can then use those coastal navigation techniques to safely get into some place where we can drop anchor and fix whatever the problem is. But let me run through an example of what that looks like. All right, so let's run through a scenario which we actually did at one point. So I do have little stray marks on this chart from before. But let's say that we're gonna head from Rum Key up to San Salvador. It's about 30 nautical miles. Once you come around Rum Key, it's a straight shot. Nothing really complicated. You do have a prevailing current coming this way, and let's say that the wind is also basically coming in this direction. So so what would I do as far as passage planning goes? So first of all, I do all my route and passage planning on electronic charts like a sane person would do. But I do one thing on the paper charts, and that's I take a look at them. First of all, I kind of like looking at paper charts as well. But let's say that we're anchored here, and then the plan is we're going to get up in the morning, and then we're going to come around the corner. Once we clear Rum Key and we have a straight shot for San Salvador, that's when I'm going to actually turn and make a straight shot for San Salvador. So all I do the night before is I figure out, at what point are we actually going to be lined up with our destination, have a straight shot. And so that's about down here at this waypoint. So during passage planning, I go ahead and figure out what that course over ground will be once we round this corner. All right, it's about 28 degrees true. I don't care about true though, because if we were to lose our electronics on board, I need magnetic bearings. So if you look at the compass rose, it tells you the magnetic variation is 9 degrees 19 minutes west. So that means I need, because it's west, I need to add this value to the true bearing to have the magnetic bearing. But that's back in 2015, that's 10 years ago. It changes 4 minutes per year, so that's about 40 minutes. So if I add that to 19, it's 59 minutes. So it's essentially 10 degrees. So my magnetic variation is 10 degrees. So I'll be adding that value to any of the true values. So since it was 28 degrees true, that means that 38 degrees magnetic is the course over ground once we come around Rum Key that we need to head to get to Cockburn Town. So that's all I do the night before. Next morning we get up, we work our way around Rum Key. Once we get to this area over here, I'm going to use the chart plotter and I'm going to point directly to Cockburn Town so that our course over ground is a straight shot to Cockburn Town. Now, our heading won't be there because we have some leeway affecting the boat from the current and the wind. So in all likelihood, we're actually going to be pointed in that direction, so the boat will be traveling in that, will be pointed in this direction, but it'll be being pushed this way. So once we get around the corner, we start getting the impacts of the leeway. I point the chart plotter directly to Cockburn Town, and then I take a look at the magnetic heading that we're actually on to get to the destination. Let's just say that we end up at a 43 degrees magnetic. So we have 5 degrees of leeway. So that's the actual course over ground. That's our actual heading that we will use for this trip, is 43 degrees magnetic. That's all I do. The rest of the time I pay attention to all of our electronic charts. Chances are when we get to the destination, I'm going to throw this in the trash because we didn't need it. But what if 4 hours into the trip, a squall rolls through, wind shifts 180 degrees, kind of spins us around, we get hit by lightning, we mess with the sails a little bit, and then we ask ourselves, what direction do we need to head to get to land? Without this information, I honestly don't know how you would know what direction to head to get to land. Luckily we're talking about the Bahamas, but at the same time you don't want to spend a day going in the wrong direction, or missing some of these islands. If you can't see them because visibility is low, you could actually pass pretty close to some of these islands and not even know that they're there. So that's why I write this information down. So here's how I would use it. So where are we? We know that we traveled for 4 hours before we got hit by lightning, and we know that throughout the day we were traveling about 5.5 knots. But I also know that once we came around this corner and we got our magnetic heading that we were traveling on, I know that we actually didn't stay on that course. I know that I wanted a little bit better angle of the wind. Let's say that we deviated 10 degrees to port, and we started traveling in that direction with the anticipation that eventually we would tack and kind of return back in this direction. But we were traveling 10 degrees off course on purpose. So where are we on the chart? So we were traveling 38 degrees was our original magnetic bearing, but we deviated by 10 degrees to the port. So that's actually 28 degrees magnetic. Because this chart only shows the true values, so 28 degrees magnetic is 18 degrees true. So if I go here to 18 degrees, go ahead and find out what our course over ground actually was. I can draw a line here. So that's actually the line that we were traveling on. And we went for 4 hours. So I know that each minute of latitude is 1 nautical mile. So 4 hours, 5.5 knots, that's 22 nautical miles we traveled. So let me go ahead and see how far 11 would be. So there's 11 nautical miles right there. So 11, 22. Whoop, I was following the wrong line. 11, 22. So we're somewhere here, and we're probably in the ballpark of the area right here, because that's how far we would have traveled, and that's the actual direction that we traveled. So what direction do we need to head in now to get to San Salvador Island? So if we're somewhere in the center, if we're in the center of that circle, which obviously we're not, but hopefully we're close, that's the direction that we actually need to head to get to Cockburn Town. And if I bring it back here to the compass rose, I can see that that's about 52 degrees true. I have to add 10 to that to get to the magnetic heading that we need to head in. But I also know that I've been impacted by 5 degrees leeway, assuming that has stayed the same. The leeway is going to actually be pushing me to the left, so I need to steer to the starboard 5 degrees. So 50 degrees magnetic is actually the heading that I need to head in. So from here to here, I'm going to steer the compass to 67 degrees magnetic, and hopefully get somewhere in the vicinity of Cockburn Town. So the idea is that it'll get us close enough to land so that I can start using the coastal navigation techniques to actually get us safely into an anchorage. So if we turn to page 41, what does that look like? We would come in somewhere in here. Hopefully we would get within sight of land. I would be able to start determining where we're actually at by looking at some of these things on the land that are marked on the chart. I'd hopefully be able to recognize them, figure out exactly where we're at, and pull into an anchorage somewhere, drop the anchor, and fix the issue. But that is why I write down those 2 bearings when we go on a passage that we're going to be out of sight of land.